Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are two brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
That was a better intro song. I actually went back and listened to a few episodes ago, and my intro song sucked. That's a good one. We're gonna maybe build that into our theme here.
That reminds me. I think that came from like a Mace song back in the day. Like,
oh man, what a great reference, Mace. Man.
Mace was my jam.
Kicking up dust in my polo boots, getting low on the droves, making smoke on my nose. Anyways, I can go off on some Mace right now, but I'm not going to. You're welcome. Man, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty good today. Good. Yeah, we talked about it, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in terms of our theme today. Just the haziness, the fogginess that the pursuit of something great kind of comes with at times. But regardless of all that, I'm feeling pretty refreshed. I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, you should.
I'm coming back from a 3-day fishing trip, and I'm feeling real good about it.
You were by yourself for 3 days, just
to be on your own.
On the river.
To be on your
own agenda.
Own agenda, doing what you want to do, when you want to do it. There's no rush. There's no pressure. I didn't get to sleep in, which I'm a little bit bummed about, so I'm going to be that guy right now and complain a little bit. But I had to
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares at all. But it was wonderful. And for any of you out there, even if you're an extroverted person, just getting some time and space alone, especially in nature. For me, nature just absolutely fills my soul every single time I go into it. But I just highly recommend it. No matter what, find that space, find that time, and be able to really check out completely, right? Out of service, get things out of mind so that you can really rest and let some of the BS just get out of your head. You know what I mean? That headspace allows not only a lot of healthy things to come in, but it allows some unhealthy things to kind of get out.
Yeah, I think it reminds me like what the point is. Like it kind of brings you back to, I don't know, it's primal almost.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of just brings you back to like, I'm so small in the scope of all these things and my issues that feel so big. And I don't mean to minimize them because we all have issues and they all feel big, but they're, in the grand scheme, so insignificant.
They are. And what's really ironic, Luke, is I've been talking to a lot of people. I'm getting into coaching, as I've mentioned. Got a few practice clients I'm working with. And when I ask the question, it's universal. When I ask the question, what would yourself 10 years from now say to you now? Say to you today about your pursuits, what you're getting after, what you're going for. Every single person every time starts with, don't worry, man.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay.
We know, don't we?
Yes.
Like on some like deep internal knowing, like it's all going to work out.
It's going to work out fine. It is, right? And even if it's not what you expected, to your dad's point, you will make it right, right? You've made the decisions you've made. You will end up making those decisions right.
Yeah, I love that. My dad says sometimes there's not a right decision. Sometimes there's just a decision, and then you make it right.
And I have to argue that's 80% of the time. That's an 80-20 principle situation. That's 80% of the time you will make the situation right for yourself.
You know, as we're both people of faith, and I don't know about you, but I'm guilty in my prayers being like, give me the direction. Give me the path. Give me the, like, be the lamp unto my feet, to quote scripture, right? And if you think about it, the lamp unto your feet isn't to guide the way. It's to just make sure you don't stumble and fall and break an ankle, and it's just to see what's right in front of you.
That's a great point. Lamps don't give you, it's not like, I don't even know how many lumens it would take, but it's not like 2,000 lumens or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just enough to see a little bit in front of you just to make sure you don't stumble and fall. What a great point.
Yeah, it's, you know, we want this, give it to me. I want to see where we're going. Doesn't work that way. Not for everybody.
Right.
Like, I believe that there are some people I would call them lucky. I really would.
We also don't know their whole story either. So
we don't. And we only know what they present.
Right.
Right. Coming back to the social media conversation that we had several episodes ago about we only get the 2% of the wins.
Right.
Right. So we don't know the whole story.
Yeah. We can assume maybe.
Yeah, we can. But, when people present like they've got it all together and they know exactly where they're going, I believe some do. But that is such a small percentage of people.
And it has to resonate with your own common sense, right?
Yeah.
Like when they're sharing with you what's going on or what they've accomplished or whatever else it is, if it doesn't land with common sense, it's probably fabricated, right, to some degree. But you can tell someone's genuine or not and been through it and really does have their ducks in a row. And I just call those people disciplined. Yeah. Those are usually the most disciplined people.
So let's kind of unpack this a little bit. You were talking about as we were like, what are we talking about today? Like we do every time. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? You're like, it just feels cloudy right now. You guys are going. You're moving at a high rate of speed. Unpack that for me. What feels cloudy? What are you hoping? What would you hope the experience is like versus the way it is? What is that internal struggle? Like, let's go there. What does navigating through the fog look like?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I have some clarity over, and it's been a conviction for the last 5-6 years or so to get into 5 different markets, right? Have 5 office locations in 5 different markets throughout Washington State, and then decide where to expand from there. So it's kind of the core vision for where we're going and why we're doing what we're doing. But the cloudiness, I guess, comes from, for me anyways, comes from more day-to-day stuff. Just getting bogged down by some of the minutia, things that don't necessarily inspire me, that just kind of come along with the rest of it that most people don't think about when you think about running a business. And so, I don't know if cloudiness really is the right word. It just feels, it feels hazy, I guess. Cloudiness might be a good word too. It's fine. But haziness in terms of, I almost just feel like I don't have focus on my lenses, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I can see all the landscape. I can move through it just fine and I can figure out where I'm going. But actual clarity on what makes the most sense in real time as I go. And part of me has been, I wouldn't say insecure around financials. That's not it. I feel secure around financials. We're in good shape. I just want to be like a pro, right? I want to be able to look at a sheet of financials and go boom, 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 figure that out, fix it, go. And I don't even know if that's realistic, if that's even a thing. Most people with financials probably go, no, I don't do that. I analyze it for 48 hours and then decide what makes sense, move this over here and everything else. But it was interesting. I was talking to a practice coach, one of the coaches in my class. We do little practice pods where we have little sessions together. And I was explaining all this, and I have hired a fractional CFO that I told you about, hired him a couple months ago, and he's doing a fantastic job in the background, already paying for himself. And the guy looked at me and he goes, well, you're figuring it out. And I was like, but I had to bring someone in to do that. And he was like, that's figuring it out. And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
So for whatever reason, I feel like I'm still in that entrepreneurial part of my life that I still am struggling with letting go of things I need to let go of. You know what I mean? Or not taking full responsibility for things that are not my proficiencies. You know what I mean? And you have to do those for the short term. And I'll talk to you more about this as we get off camera because we don't need to dissect all this, but my bigger thing now, and I'll work with our fractional CFO on it as well, is really determining when there's enough money to make the next hire, right? When that's justified, boom, there's enough here, go. Hire the next person. Now you can scale and you can grow in this way. I don't know if you cart before the horse that, or you wait until there's a certain financial formula that tells you when that's necessary. Now we're switching. I'm really rambling here, so sorry guys, but we're switching from cash accounting to accrual accounting.
Yep.
Which has been wonderful. He's asking a lot of questions and making changes that I just wouldn't know how to make on my own. So I'm learning all this stuff as I go. I'm learning how to set ourselves up for the long run, really to build ourselves out so that we're healthy as we go, not spinning in circles and having to go backwards trying to recreate something we should have on the front end. So anyway, I'm trying to figure out how to piece all that stuff together, but I'd really like to be able to better identify when there's a new opportunity within my financial story, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. So that was a lot of rambling, but where's your haziness at?
I don't even know what to say now. It's like that was a lot there to unpack.
Yeah.
My haziness, which is interesting that we're both kind of it's going to look very different, but for me, the path forward isn't clear at all. You said that you feel like you have a pretty good scope of the landscape. It's just not in definition, right? It just hasn't been, you can tell it's a tree, but you can't really tell what kind of tree that is.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
I'm like, well, that's a sandstorm. I can't see what's past the sandstorm.
Yeah.
And storm's the wrong metaphor there, but it's like a shroud. Like I feel like I can't see beyond a certain point. And in those moments for me, and there's a lot of things at play with that. Part of it is just the busyness of this moment. My assistant has been out on maternity leave, so I've been picking up her responsibilities. I had a key manager resign, short-term resign, and I'm going to be leaving next week, and all at the same time. And so it was like, okay, I was already working 15 hours a day with my assistant out.
Yeah.
And then now I can't do a third job. I'm not going to work.
You don't have the capacity.
I'm not going to work 23 hours a day to get the job done. So a lot of that was just like, how do I solve this equation? I can't afford to see beyond this.
Right.
This is what I have to focus on. And so I think sometimes we confuse long range vision for the short term, like, well, this is the fire that's in front of me.
Right.
And we get caught up, we kind of forget and we lose track of what that is. And so there's an element of just busyness right now for me that's preventing me from being able to really sit down and go, okay, where's this ship going?
Right.
It's just kind of in the problem solve mode right now.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, you know this, my current company of Cascade, it's not my only pursuit.
Right.
And there's some potentially big things in the hopper right now and have a decent likelihood of landing. And so it's like everything could shift in the matter of 30 to 60 days here and everything changes. So I say all that as I kind of reel that back in to go, sometimes the long term doesn't matter because even with best laid plans, it's going to look different.
Right.
It's not going to be what you thought it was. I mean, if you'd have looked at yourself, I don't remember the time frame, a year ago, 2 years ago, and you had the whole, we don't need to dissect what it was, but it was the 100 and 100, like I wanted to get 100 people to 100,000. Like,
right.
That was a whole thing that you had, and like, this is where we're headed. Well, sure, until it wasn't.
Right.
And so are these things cloudiness? Is it navigating through the fog, or is it just trying to find the vector where you find the break in the fog? Are we trying to go through the fog, or are we trying to find the section where there is no fog?
I just brought up the point of asking yourself, or if you were 10 years in the future, what would you say to yourself now? But what if you were to actually stop and ask yourself, what would Gavin at 50 years old, what would Gavin want? And I know that's hard to project, right? Again, that's future, that's way out there. But I'm also wondering if sometimes our vision is, I wouldn't say not long-term enough, but not thoughtful enough about the long-term. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like we cast this long-term vision, but do we really think about who am I going to be at that age? What type of person am I going to be? What age are my kids going to be? What level of education am I going to have? Are these things going to matter to me? Is it important enough for me 10 years from now to keep going? Mm-hmm. I don't have those conversations with myself. My visions just kind of develop on their own. They kind of become these whimsical moments of wonderment, right? Boy, that was a
Wow.
That was a fun little saying.
Whimsical moments of wonderment.
Put a unicorn horn on that shit. That was awesome. But I wonder if it would be wise for me to just stop and go, I want to make sure my vision today aligns with who I project to be in my future years.
So good. And I think another lens of that is, all right, if this is where I'm headed, who am I going to have to become to get there?
I just got chills, dude.
That's
big.
One of my best friends says, become what is required. And it's like, okay, what's going to be required to get to there?
Right.
And am I doing the things? So there's two sides of this. Am I doing the things today to become that person?
Right.
But two, is that the person I want to become?
Exactly. Right. And what do you want to be an authority in? Right. What do you want to learn the most about? Those types of questions. Right. Mm-hmm. Because eventually, once you've learned enough and you're projecting outwardly, you're going to be seen as an authority in that subject. Mm-hmm. Is that something that long term you're excited about?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, this is what I want to identify with the rest of my life. For me, as I've explained, fly fishing and barbecue, I've played with the ideas of getting into it professionally, sure, but those are forever my identity. They'll never leave my identity. They're so rooted in everything I do. But I want that to be professionally too. And it's interesting. I made a comment about a year ago, saying something like, I don't really have an identity in real estate. And somebody looked at me like, dude, come on, really? Like, when people think of real estate in this area, they think of your name. I'm like, really? You don't know that until someone says something
sure,
to you. But then it made me realize, yeah, okay, maybe I've earned that. Maybe I've earned some identity in that lane. And I know that it's something that I'm proud of, and I think we have a good reputation with, and why would I not want to continue down that line, to see where it can go? But everything we're doing now, what's interesting to me is, as we're having this discussion, and I love that we always talk about these topics in real time, because you guys get to see our actual true reactions.
Yeah, the epiphanies happen in the moment. In
the moment of, man, I might be saying this too soon, but I believe what we're doing now, you and I think 10 years from now will completely shape our lives forever. We don't see it yet. We've talked about how we're going to maybe get there a little bit on the phone. But I have a feeling that we are living in that identity already, whether we know it or not.
Well, I think there's some truth to that. At every decade of our life, what we're doing today dictates what happens in 10 years.
Yeah.
We are today based on what we decided to do 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And so, that being the lens, are we doing the things today, coming back to where we started,
right,
that will get us to where we want to be in 10 years? I think we overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, and we underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade.
Let me touch on this. This just came to mind. Let me touch on this. Also, I want to make sure we're clear that change is easy for some people, right? Internal change. You want to become this person. You're pursuing this thing. You're getting after it. Great. There are other people that don't handle change very well, right? They fight it. And I don't necessarily mean that intrinsically. I mean that environment. Your spouse might not like change, right? You may go, I'm pivoting. I'm doing something new. I'm doing something different. I'm excited. I'm going to become this person. They might not like that. They might not like that change.
Yeah.
Right. They may have resistance toward that change. And so you're going to have to be very consciously aware of that and positively affirm yourself and the whole situation, and learn how to persuasively sell what you're doing to everybody around you, because you may find not everybody's on board.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that.
Yeah, but that goes. We could take that to a whole nother level too, on like people being on board and your vision versus like seeing things before other people see them, and there's a whole lot there to unpack. Let's go to the practical.
Yeah.
For you, how does your vision of what the next year to 10 years looks like, how does that, in practicality of decision making, what filter does that give you for today?
The I think that's the majority. Thank you for asking that question. I think that's the majority of my stress is that, like I can see where we need to go and I can feel it internally. I can't day-to-day stuff though. That's why Steph is, like your assistant. Steph is my operations director. She has all of those skill sets to do all those things I can't do very well. And it takes a lot of collaboration for the day-to-day amongst my team. We're constantly on Slack, constantly having, I wouldn't say constantly having meetings. We don't have a lot of formal meetings because we're constantly in communication all day, every day. Although I need to sit down and make sure I'm clarifying vision type meetings with everybody. And I'm also going back to your vision concern over people following you and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually a little in our last team meeting back at the end of May, which was awesome, really, really positive meeting. I had one agent lean in and go, "What's your vision for all this? Where are we going?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." I was really afraid to share that before because I had more of a team scenario. And what you realize very quickly that sharing the vision really stressed them out because what they realized very quickly was the larger we get, the less I get. And that wasn't good for them. Right. So I got very quiet around my vision and kind of where we're going and all that. But I eventually shared it and it was really good to do that. But it really takes, I don't know, in the moment I sorry for the language, but I get shit done. I do. Like when it is thrown on me, Gavin, this needs to get done. I am expedient and I'll get it done quickly and pretty well. But there's not a lot of thoughtful planning around day-to-day operations from me. From her, yes, tons, all of it, the systems, all of it. So without her in my world, I also don't want to be left in a place where I feel like if someone leaves my world, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
That's not a good feeling either. So trying to manage all of those things. But back to the vision thing, most CEOs, successful ones, repeat their vision 40% of their day over and over. Mission statement, vision, over and over to everybody that they encounter all day long. And that's pretty interesting to me that's the leadership style that pushes the ball forward. People have to be reminded daily why they're doing what they're doing, how to do what they're doing, and what to do every day.
I'll have to let that one sink in a little bit because Cascade's been in a weird place where the vision hasn't. It's like okay, getting vulnerable here. The vision has been, let's make sure this ship doesn't sink. That's what it's been for probably 2 years.
I'll bet you anything. There's people listening in that are in that same situation.
Yeah, it's been like, okay, like I'm just trying to keep this one off the rocks.
Right.
Like it's been messy.
Yeah.
And in those seasons, communicating vision to a team, I don't know how you do it. And I legitimately would be like, my assistant would be like, I feel like it's time to do a company meeting. And I'm like, I don't really want to. I don't know what I say. Hey guys, we didn't lose as much money this quarter as we did last quarter. Yay. I mean, that's not motivating. And so
I see where you're at though.
We changed our company meetings a little bit to be more, we're a fully remote team. So our company meetings switched a little bit to be more relationship driven, just like trying to build camaraderie. I don't know if that was the right call or not, but like communicating what the ground that we hope to take and why we're doing this and what we're doing, like it just felt so counterintuitive, counterproductive to me. So I didn't do it. That was one of the reasons why I lost my manager. So
interesting.
So, should I have done it? Well, I mean, in theory, to keep that person. Would I have lost somebody else? Maybe. I don't know. It's just, it's not always that there's, coming back to right decision. It's not always that there's a right decision. Maybe there was, and it'll take doing it wrong before you understand what that right decision is.
Right.
But that was the decision that I made, and so I decided to make that one right.
How often do you talk about the problems within your company to your company, or do you at all? Or do you feel like that's a CEO's job to figure that out, and I'm not going to bring up those kinds of problems to my team?
Well, I think you have to be specific on what we're talking about problem-wise, right?
Yeah, I just mean like in terms of if you're at a point where you're feeling like you're keeping it off the rocks, is there a point to where you sit down with everybody and go, here's what we're up against. Here's what's going on. The industry's shifting. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to do my own research. I haven't solved this. I need everyone to lean in and help me solve this.
Yeah.
Do you have those conversations, or is it no, not really?
I did in the beginning. So I told you this has been going on for a couple years.
Yeah.
I did in the beginning. I was like, look, guys, I'm just letting you know, I'm not sure what's in front of us. Like, and this was part of coming out of COVID, and there was just a lot of moving pieces.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know what's coming.
Right.
And this could be an awkward stage. But after the second meeting of doing that, and then the third meeting of doing that, I'm like, is it helpful to continue to say the same thing? That's, well, thanks for being on board, guys. I have no idea where we're going. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Feels
stopped.
feels redundant.
It feels redundant, and it felt counterproductive. Was it? I don't know. But that was the path that I chose. And so I did do that. But at some point, you just have to go, okay, I'm just going to have to I got to figure this out.
What put the shoe on the other foot? What if you were an employee looking up to a leader? I know it's hard to do because I haven't been there for a long time. What would you want them to say? Like
decades for me.
How would you want them to handle it? You know, just from a different perspective looking in.
Look, if I'm an employee, I'm all about like what does this mean for me? Like, what am I getting out of this? Is my job secure? And I suppose there's different levels of employees. You have people that are just there for the paycheck, and you have some people that are there for what you're creating. So maybe the answer to that is different things for different people. Okay, you know,
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just, you know, and maybe it has to do with hierarchy, you know, of where they're at in the org structure based on how you communicate those things. Like, you can bring your inner circle, your leaders, your C-suites in and be serious with that.
Right.
Here's what's up. Here's what we're up against. You guys need to help me solve this.
Yeah.
But for the person in the mailroom, you know, quote unquote, like, they don't care.
They're there for a paycheck.
They don't care. And so there is going to be some gradient in there of like how to have those conversations and yeah. You also hear the examples of like leaders who are like, we're going to do this and this is all happening and it's good. And behind the scenes, this is burning to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that? Silicon Valley Bank. I often think of that one that came crashing down not that long ago. It's probably a similar situation. And I also think these were some of the smartest dudes coming out of Stanford and Harvard and in Penn and everything. And the whole thing went down, you know, I'm like, who didn't see this coming? Kind of a thing.
Yeah. You know, the average wealthy person has seen 3 bankruptcies. So there's an element of just like failing's a part of this game, and not solving it in the end is a reality.
What would you do, like if you were an employee looking at the whole, and I know different employees are going to take things differently, but I'm just trying to figure out how do we engage, how is it possible to engage the company itself to be the one to keep it off the rocks, not you. You know what I mean? Which they are in terms of operations and all that kind of stuff. But then the next question really is like, how do you clarify the vision? How do you think it's possible? You know, I know we're both in this hazy zone. Maybe different days are cloudier than others. But what can we do to actually create clarity? Like, what is the action steps that will get us to a more clarified state? I don't know.
Oh, gosh. I think that, you know, if we think about it in terms of our employees, you have to think about it in the terms of the silo that they own. So,
sure,
you know, are they doing everything they can to perform the best at their job, or do they need to level up too? Is that a piece of this? And so I think that there's some conversations there to be had. Ultimately, as president and CEO, I mean, it's your responsibility to cast the vision and make sure that you have the team to get you there. And so that's not going to be somebody else's responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, you can open the doors and be like, look, guys, here's what we're up against. If anybody has ideas, please. And you're going to find that your employees have incredible ideas.
Right.
And so there's value in doing that. At the end of the day, though, they're not going to execute on that, and they're not going to be the ones to decide what goes forward and what doesn't, and what gets accepted and what doesn't. You are. And so you can have those conversations, and you can make sure that, you know, sales is taking care of sales, and marketing is taking care of marketing, and HR is taking care of HR, and like that they're doing excellence in the lanes that they're in. But, you know, if you've got a marketing issue, you're not going to task HR with helping you solve it.
Correct.
Right. So I don't know.
It really depends on really the whole scope of the situation. Let's get to the next question though. How can we clarify things for ourselves? How do we get, is it rest? Is it what is it? Is it exercise? What is it that will help create clarity?
Okay, so this is through the lens of my moment, okay? I'm not saying this is right. Time. I think that for me, you're not going to necessarily always have clarity. The only thing that I hope for, pray for now, and expect is that the next single decision is clear. The next right decision will be obvious. And you might not know the second or the third or the fourth or the end game because it's not clear and it's messy. And it being okay in that discomfort is where I feel like I'm being challenged right now. In letting go, surrendering what this turns into, and zooming back in instead of trying to be this visionary leader that's casting vision of where we're going. Zooming back in and going, what does today need? Right. What does this moment here require? What's the next right decision? Not without taking, I'm not saying take your eye off of, like, is it becoming any clearer as I look out there? But not using that as your, like, true north of making decisions. Right. Because sometimes you don't see it. And so for me right now, I have to go, all right, here's another example. We're in the pursuit of, I'm going to let I won't talk about specifics, but let a bit of a cat out of a bag here, but, we're in the pursuit of buying a hotel.
Yep. Brooke gave me a little bit of that information this morning.
Yeah. I've never bought a hotel.
What? About like 17. So not many people have.
Yeah, this is my foray into some of the commercial real estate, and the reason why I'm wanting to go here is because I have a background in short-term rentals and doing some of that stuff, and so it's very applicable. And so we're pursuing this, just small hotel, but we're pursuing this hotel acquisition. I don't know the order of operations of things. I don't know the next right decisions all the time. I don't know where this is going and how long this is going to take to make an acquisition like this. All I know is that, like, well, today I need to call my banker and see what other paperwork I need to give to him.
But by the fifth hotel you buy, you'll have all that stuff down and know exactly what's coming and all that.
Absolutely. But in context of sometimes where the vision is, you don't always, in this case, I know where I'm headed. Like, I want to acquire this. The path between where I'm at and the acquisition and the running of is all gray. It's like, I don't know what diligence is going to look like. I don't know what, inspections and walkthroughs and navigating contractors to talk about renovations, and I don't know, financial modeling and things. I mean, yeah, we're starting to do some of those things, but I don't know what that's all going to look like.
Yeah.
And so all I know is what the next obvious step was, all right, well, let's contact the SBA. All right, let's talk to a few investors and make sure we have the money on board. All right, let's make this call. It's sometimes it's only the next call that you see.
And when you're dealing with real estate, whether you're a professional investor, just a everyday buyer, there are so many okie dokes that are thrown in your face that you won't be prepared for and you can't be prepared for. And that's kind of life in general, right? So you're right. In pursuing anything around real estate, just do the next thing. And the truth is, not to discourage you, every phone call turns into 3 more. So
which is when you don't know what to do, sometimes helpful.
Yeah, educational for
It's
sure.
like, okay, all right, I didn't know that. Thank you. I will call that person. Like, for example, I was trying to figure out how the lending model works on something like this, because it's not just, I mean, yes, you can do conventional commercial lending and you can do that whole thing, but I was wanting to go a little bit of an alternate, reduce my down payments, get better rates than I can get through conventional. So I started doing some research. There's an SBA program out there. So I contacted, contacting different people, and ultimately I needed to contact the bank. And I was like, oh, I knew that. I knew that. So I didn't know that though till I went through. I made 3 phone calls to 3 different people, all of which was helpful and beneficial and educational, to ultimately go, oh, all right, well, I need to establish a relationship with a commercial lender at a local bank. Got it.
Yep.
I'll do that. And once you say it out loud, you're like, well, duh.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I don't know.
There are very few generalists in real estate, right? So every single conversation you have, and this is for all of you guys that are investing in real estate, there's a specialist for every single freaking thing. So you have to have all of those points of contact. The more resources you have available to you, meaning people, services, things like that, the better. Especially in a small town, the labor pool is small, so you have to really consider those things too, right? I don't have a lot of options to be able to get multiple bids. I mean, you have some, but if I find a good contractor, I got to go with them, because if I screw that guy over, I don't have a good contractor anymore, and there's no more left in the valley. So there's a lot of little nuances that you learn in real estate, and you're learning them very quickly.
Well, and sure. Another example of this is, because of our market, there's not commercial brokers. There's not dedicated commercial brokers in this market.
Nope.
So someone who in a bigger market might be able to lead you through some of these things of like, here's who you need to contact, here's your pieces. Like, that's not available. And the brokers that I'm using are great. Like, I have no complaints about that. But at the same time, it's a little out of their wheelhouse. This isn't what they do on a day-to-day basis. Right. And that goes for my buyer's broker as well as it goes for the seller's broker. Yep. Like, there's an element of like,
both are primarily residential real estate agents.
Both are.
Yeah.
And so
we're in a tiny town.
They're a little under-equipped to answer my questions. So I have to go through the process of like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. Yeah. So it's just it's a moment snapshot of what's going on to illustrate the point, though, that it's like, well, I don't know what this looks like as we go. I just know, well, this is the next phone call I have to make. So I'll go there, and hopefully after making that phone call, the next step will become obvious.
This is kind of a side note. If you run into an issue, let me know, because I'm co-listing commercial property probably this coming week. Listing docs are out with a commercial broker I've developed a great relationship with over from Seattle, Kidder Matthews. If you run into any hangups, you're like, oh, what is this scenario? Run it past me. I'll run it past him if I don't know, and we'll make sure you get the answers you need.
Sounds great.
He's bought and sold 17 restaurants on his own. Anyway, the guy is very well-versed in commercial real estate, so I'll have your back no matter what.
Love that, and I probably will take you up on that, because sure. I'm flying blind, and I'm being led by the blind, and so it's a little intimidating. It is. Yeah. It is.
Yeah. So I understand that.
But it is, whether it's Cascade or whether it's this potentially new venture or whether it's the next wild idea that I have. Speaking of, wild idea, I told my dad, I was like, I think I'm looking at buying this hotel. He started laughing, not from a standpoint of like, who do you think you are? But like, of course you are. Like, what? I mean, you live an adventurous life. Of course that's what you'd be doing. It's just, you never know what the next thing is. And
what do they say? If people don't laugh at you when you tell them what you're going to do, your dream's not big enough.
Right.
So maybe that was an indication. Okay. That's big enough.
Yeah. So, can you see the next right step, and is it obvious? And sometimes that's all that matters. I guess is my point in all of that. I could have said in one sentence.
But I love all the background, because the details I think people relate to, is if people are going through it just as we are. Nobody's absolved from the same issues. We're all pretty much meeting the same kind of scenarios on a daily basis, hardships, things like that. And so I think it's really important to hear the details on how things are going, and not just sharing the 2% wins. it's important that we also talk about the 98% confusion and frustration and everything else that can go along with this venture. But I really appreciated your answer around time. That was a really wise answer. You know, I think it's easy to throw something at somebody just to make them feel good in the moment, but to allow time to play out, you know, and just say, you know, I need to stop trying to control all this all the time. That is stressful.
Yes.
You know, and for me, I think the control comes from, you know, a incessant need to impress people, right? So I've got to control this thing so people see it the way I want them to see it. And it's like, it's okay. And also not very many people care. And, you know, we get caught up in this idea that people care so much about what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're doing in life. It's interesting that you shared, and I haven't shared this with you yet, so I'm glad we're on camera and we're going to go over this.
Yes. Something new.
It's a
Hot
really,
off the presses.
It's a really positive thing. So, so you're obviously sharing what's going on internally, externally, even with your circumstances. And I just had a conversation with somebody who knows you guys. You don't know very well. They know of you. And their comment to my friend was, wow, what a successful family. That was the comment. What a successful family. That's all they perceive. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So then you step back. I got chills saying that because I realized in this moment that no matter how heavy we believe things are around us and our circumstances are, outside looking in, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah. Man, I told you in the last time we recorded that I got spanked by my mastermind group for doubting myself or thinking that I wasn't successful through the lens that I wasn't living up to my potential, or, you know, something in there. Yeah. I don't think we need to unpack it again, but
we have those woe is me moments. Yeah.
That feels good. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the perception, and that was a perception from someone who is also successful. That is not from somebody who's a bum. That's from somebody that is living a great life and living a big life.
Interesting.
And they see yours and going, that is what success looks like and feels like. So, you know, hopefully that sinks in a little bit today and you can wrap that around you like a warm sweater and snuggle up in it. But I was really encouraged by that comment. I was like, thank you for saying that. It had nothing to do with me, but thank you for saying that. That was cool to hear that.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily want to, like, you know, predicate all the things you do on how people perceive you, but you never really know how you're doing until someone stops and says, you're doing great.
Yeah.
You're doing great. And then you realize, yeah, everything's okay. Everything's going to turn out okay.
I'm going to spin this conversation a little bit. We'll see where this goes. Why do we do that? Why do we doubt ourselves? Maybe it's just me. I know it's not just me. Why do we doubt ourselves? Why do we feel that? Why do we compare everything? Why do we take our weaknesses and compare them to somebody else's strengths and feel that we are not doing the job that we should be doing?
I personally think it only comes from the HALT, the 4: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. When we are one of those 4, we start to spin into negative mental cycles. One of those 4. Yep. So check in there. If you're starting to spiral into a negative, funky space, my guess is you're in one of those zones. I really believe that. Because the next day, you could be feeling strong, right? Full, rested, and you're driving down the road feeling like, we got this shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We got this. We're about to crush it. And you just feel this sense of, maybe they come, it's 2% of the time,
yeah.
You know, but you get those whiffs of excitement. And I think we probably have more control over that than we think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
We're so guilty though.
Because we're always bumping up against those 4 states.
Yeah.
We're always running into it every single day. At some point during the day, you're going to feel that. Maybe not angry, right? Anger can come with circumstances, but nevertheless, those other 3 for sure, you're going to bump into maybe loneliness too. Tired and hungry for sure, right? You're going to hit that every single day at some point. And so you got to check in and go like, am I in my best state right now? Like, should I even be taking what I'm thinking seriously? You don't really get there because unfortunately when you're in that state, you're not thinking that way, right?
Yeah.
Usually you're just kind of in a zone. But I think we have full control over it.
Let's follow this comparison thread because I think it dovetails with our conversation.
Yeah.
You know, you and I are talking about things being cloudy, foggy, hazy, out of focus, right? You can define that in a number of different ways, and the experience is different on each of those levels. But it all translates to some sort of vision barrier, right? Do we think that then my mastermind would ask me, well, what did you expect to happen? What did you expect the experience to look like? And I think sometimes, coming back to comparison, whether that's through social media or that friend that we have or whatever it might be, where their vision seems so clear that we expect that when it's working, that's what it should be like. Is that true? Or is the experience of, I don't know what's actually going on, normal?
I think it's normal, but I think the background is, I'm sorry if I'm saying something that's going to make you have some feels right now, but I think it's whether or not we want it. I think the more trouble we have creating and casting a clear vision, the less we want that thing in our life. And we're just trying to make sense of it. I'll give you my example. When I was running the Keller Williams team, that was what I kept bumping into. Casting this vision, I want to go. I want to do the 100 in 100. We want to do this thing. And it kept getting cloudier and heavier and darker because I realized this is not what I want. I don't want this in my life. I don't like this model. I don't like the people that are in my life right now. I don't want this. And this vision is fading away because it's not my vision anymore.
That resonates because that was maybe is, but that was for sure the issue with Cascade.
Yeah.
Is like, because of COVID, and a lot of people went sideways during COVID, but because of the industry that we're in COVID, we got absolutely train wrecked. And having to rebuild through that, it turned into a business that I never intended to build.
Right.
And so what it was becoming wasn't something that I was excited about pursuing. And it's really hard to problem solve in that headspace because it's like, why am I doing, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want this business anymore. I don't want to deal with these people anymore. Sorry if you're listening and you're one of those people, but that's where I was at.
And that's grief. There's real grief that sets in when that moment, when that thought sets into your brain that I don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
It gets very clarifying in a different way. But then how do you explain to anybody that I was so gung-ho about this, right? I'm 100 in 100. I'm doing this thing, and then I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm, how do you explain that to your wife? How do you explain that to your family? And it came with a lot of hard conversations. I'll say that. That put some major stress on my marriage, for sure. So I'd say more than anything, and the bigger conversation around this is, when do you know when to stop, and when do you when to keep pushing the ball?
That's exactly where
forward?
my mind was on that too.
Yeah.
Because just because there's resistance doesn't mean that it's not the right thing.
Right. Well, I think I mentioned this to you before, but the consultant we were working with, and we still are slowly pursuing building an ADU on our property. But, our budget, or not our budget was $350, and our bid in 7 months went up to $460. And I thought, I didn't save an extra $110,000 to do this, so I can't do that. And I told him I got to stop this project. I think we ended up spending like $7,000 on the development, getting all the feasibility ready, all that kind of stuff. Plans that we're no longer going to use were $2,500 to get re-engineered. Trash, going nowhere. And he said, Gavin, one of the key indicators of a very successful real estate developer versus one that doesn't do very well is knowing when to stop a project. So take that in your business, take that in your life, but it's okay to know when to stop. A lot of people see stopping as failure. It's not. It's a pause. That's all you're doing. You're just hitting a pause button, right? Just saying not right now. It's not a no forever. It's just a not right now. And that's okay. And I think we need to get a little bit better at that. The last thing I'll say too on that is, well, not the last thing I'll say, but what I'll say on vision is I'm realizing too that my haziness might be coming from my lack of communication around it. I don't know if I'm clarifying the vision to everybody else well enough that it's creating haziness for myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if clarity and the drive behind a vision comes from, like I mentioned with the CEOs repeating it 40% of their day. Maybe that might be some of the secret sauce. You have to be
You're
the
reinforcing
best
it to yourself. It's like an
communicator.
affirmation.
Yeah. Affirmation. We talked about that this morning. Super important. But yeah, just that constant communication and confirmation. Boom. Over and over and over.
Reminding yourself while you're doing it.
Correct. And to the point, and I brought up the whole, Gavin 10 years from now, who is that person going to be like? Because I think you really have to have that conversation, whether it's what you're doing now, and if it's not, that's okay. It's time to pivot, or what you want to pursue. Is it good work?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not just fulfilling to you, but the world needs it. It really needs you to do this. It would not be the same without it. If you don't feel that level of conviction, you might just keep bumping up against not wanting the thing you're building over and over and over again.
Is your ladder against the right building?
We very rarely take time to research the buildings that we're excited about. We're so quick to build a ladder.
And climb it. Like, how fast can I climb this ladder? I'm taking ground.
Yeah.
And then you get to the top of it or halfway up it, and you're like, shit, it's against the wrong building.
Yeah, this has a terrible view up here. I'm blocked by everybody else. And unfortunately, I think you might need to climb one of those ladders once or twice to realize, oh, okay, I've learned that I need to just take my time and figure out what that is. And, like I mentioned, for me, it's taking time in nature and just letting my brain just do its thing. For some of you, it might be something different, right? It might be, but I think slowing down a little bit, slowing down and allowing time to teach you the lessons, right? Instead of trying to learn them on your own and, learn the hard way a lot of times. That's me. Maybe time can be our best teacher.
So let's wrap this up.
Yep.
What did we just that sounds terrible. What did we just talk about? No, I mean that though. What's the meat of this? Like, cloudiness is going to be part of the experience.
Yeah, uncertainty is certainly a part of the conversation. I think we've touched on that quite a bit.
Am I pursuing the right things?
Right.
Is part of it.
Right. And not only pursuing the right things, but having as clear a vision as you possibly can create for your company, for yourself, for your family, communicating that as well as you possibly can. And whether or not you're putting in 100% there, right? Some people go, I communicated that good enough. Well, good enough might not be good enough. You might have to be ultra clear, over communicating all these things as best you can. And I'd say for me, I think the takeaway is vision is super important. Hold it loosely.
Yes.
Clarify it greatly. And also recognize when it's time to stop.
Yeah.
It's time to stop and move in a new direction. I know that's all still a little vague for all of you. How do you apply that to your life? And honestly, more than anything, I think for me, the lesson around all this is it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to go through this.
Yeah.
This is all part of it. This is all part of the journey, and it's not abnormal. I love one of my favorite things when I'm coaching or just having conversations with anybody is when they share something hard in their life, and I look at them and I go, so normal.
Yeah.
Or not unique at all, actually. And they go, oh, thank you for saying that. Like, I felt really alone in that.
Yeah.
You're not alone. It's all a part of the journey. It's all a part of the process. And to Luke's point, do the thing that's most obvious right in front of you.
Yeah.
Don't worry so much what's beyond it.
Yeah, that's the big one for me is we can get caught up feeling like, I don't know where this is going, or I feel like I should, right? There's a lot of should on ourselves.
Yep.
Like, I should do this. I should do that. I should know this. I should know that. And the reality is, no. If you should, then it would. Otherwise, it's not. And so it's okay.
Right.
Just look for what's the next right, obvious step and take it. And trust that the next one after that will be there.
And somebody's asked the question, well, how do I know if it's the next obvious thing? Like, how do I actually know if it's obvious? My only answer to that is follow the energy, right? I know that sounds a little new agey, but I mean that. Follow the energy. There's something that will pull you in the direction you're supposed to go. And if you're doing something else and resisting it, you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
So allow the universe will guide you. Just will. It'll guide you in the right direction. Follow the energy. You'll do the next thing. You'll be just fine. Cool.
All right.
We're out.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few gold nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.